Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Non-League Show, episode 34, Gateshead Special, sponsored by Jade Bell, her Game 2, and fake spud sponsor, DJ Private Hire. Join us now. We have Dan and Emilio. Lads, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Hello.
I like you said to Dan, you got to bear with us because I've been in the football sun all afternoon. Thought it was nice and dull, but look by the side of my forehead there, it's bright red. I'm not feeling very well. I've got the man flu as well, so I'll try my best as we go through the show tonight as well. But Dan, getting on to yourself, obviously a regular on the show, massive Gateshead fan. And looking back at last season, I know it was a bit doom and gloom at the start, but at the end, staying up quite comfortable. Wembley trip as well. What was your thoughts on last season?
I think initially, it most definitely was a learning curve for just about everyone in the football club. I think the National League that we came back into last season was a lot different to the one that we left in 2019. I think the standard has most definitely gone up, but there's a lot more teams with a bit more money to throw about. Like obviously last season you had your Wrexhams, your Notts Counties, Chesterfields, etc. So the standard had definitely gone up, and I think as well last season, when you think back of it now, like our luck with injuries in the first half of the season, injuries and suspensions was just absolutely rancid. So we never really had a settled squad for the first half of the season. I think we had a massive turnover of players in the first half of the season. So it was always going to for maybe reasons we could control, maybe reasons we couldn't control. It was just always a bit difficult to get a bit of mojo going. But once I think everyone had sort of got to grips with the league, I think Mike as a manager, some of the players as well, I think it all just seemed to fall into place. I think back to that game against Torquay we had in March where we drew 1-1, but really we should have won. I left that game, I was thinking, God, if we're having that many chances but we're still not winning, then that, what does that tell you? But then obviously the week after went to Aldershot, dominated the game there as well and did get the right result, which was followed up by a win against Dagenham, win against Yeovil, win against Scunthorpe, win against Altrincham. So I think that it all just seemed to fall into place at the right time. And I think you mentioned a trophy run as well. I think that definitely played its part. I think that was I think that was sort of something to sort of get the confidence up, get the momentum going. I think cup runs can work two ways. Sometimes it can derail your league form a little bit, but thankfully for us, I think it maybe spurred our league form on.
Really did, didn't it? Emilio, welcome to the show. First time on the channel. We always get to know a bit about our guests as well, so I know you've got a massive love for the club. And just tell us a little bit that you do for the club and your thoughts on last season.
Put it as simply as possible. I'm one of the club photographers this season. Probably will be fifth year in a row doing it. Although the season just gone being my fourth was definitely the most stressful, hair pulling, to put it simply. It was entertaining and enjoyable as it was stressful to endure. Like Dan mentioned, particularly at the start of the season, well, very first few games were in a decent spot, picking a few points on draws and so on. So I did not think it would be as hard as it was. Coming the halfway point, everyone's almost rightfully so having a meltdown on social media after another defeat, and then another one, and another one. It just felt like we'd have no luck from the start of the season up until the end. We had nearly double-digit players out injured, and so at any given time, the majority of the new signings almost couldn't actually play because they were injured. So it was almost like where the squad had been, depleted somewhat from the season before, and then it felt as if there was no one to replace the players that had gone, just because Fred there, so thin, and just everyone having to play in every different position and cover them all. But inside, I don't know, maybe I'm just forever the optimist, and so inside my head, even when after that the 3-1 loss away to Scunthorpe, which before I went in, I was like, oh, we probably need to win this game. I remember seeing the
make the touch there.
After the defeat against Scunthorpe, I was just like, well, that couldn't have gone, much worse and so on. But I still think there's half a season left. I still think, we'll stay up. And eventually, thankfully, things turned around and I was proven right. But I definitely said a few naughty words on the touchline a lot of games that I should have kept my mouth closed on just because the things getting worse and worse. But the wins at first were few and far between, but they did eventually come rolling in. And not to use the phrase "trust the process" already, but it worked out in the end. Sticking to the style of play like got up the league from the national level in the first place. High press, passing the ball around, waiting for teams to get impatient, open up gaps, go for those and score. I felt like our best performances came. The better we mirrored that style, as much as possible, as opposed to games where like heads were dropping, people were just hoofing the ball, just playing it like the other team's hands essentially. So it took a while to get going, but once we did, it looked like we just weren't going to stop. The season could have gone forever, and by the end, it felt like we would have just kept winning and winning and winning and winning over and over. So it ended much better than flu.
Good way to end, wasn't it? Even Josh, thank you for sending your comments as well. Even Craig, even lads, hope you're okay. Superheat Army as well. But Dan, season over, and obviously fourth to turn to the new season. Retain list comes out, and there's only Bailey and Ward that reject the new deals. Montgomery to Spennymoor, Harris departs. What were your thoughts on the lads leaving the club?
Well, I think in the couple of weeks before the return list came out, there was whispers about Dan Ward, and there was a lot of Oldham fans were putting his name about on Twitter a little bit. So I think that was maybe half expected, but it was a bit. It was really gutting about Bailey, I must say, because it was obviously it was a bit of a ever present in the team for last season and the season before, a bit of a linchpin in midfield. Just like whenever he was injured, you could always tell when he wasn't there. But at the same time, if there's any one footballer that deserved his chance to test himself in the Football League, then it was definitely Owen Bailey. So I certainly don't begrudge either of them of leaving the club, but so far I think we've recruited really well. I think a lot of the recruitment makes sense. So fingers crossed we can reap the rewards of that when it really counts from the 5th of August onwards.
Yeah, I must touch on one because he's been on the show before and did a former Newcastle player interview, and he always kind of said at that point he always wanted to play back in the Football League, and even after getting released by Newcastle, got his head down, went to Gateshead, and like you say, plays some good football, and it's nice to see, yes, no going up with Gateshead, but getting back into where he wants to be, isn't it? The work hard that he's put in.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think Doncaster have got they've got a really good player on their hands, so I just hope that it can have a consistent run of fitness. It can be in and around the team as much as he possibly can, and I think Doncaster really will reap the rewards of that. And I think I think the only way is up for him. Really, it won't surprise me if he carries on the way he's going. Maybe in the next couple of years, so you might even see him in League One.
Yeah, you never know, do you? Emilio obviously players then sign new deals, and as you said, just a lot of good news coming out of the club. First few signings coming in, Regan Booty, Callum Whelan, then Ed Francis as well. Three midfielders coming in. I mean, what was your thoughts kind of on them players coming straight in the roles that they could play next season?
With Francis and Whelan in particular, they were pretty important when they came in on loan last season. Like, it might have taken them to some people a few games to get going and so on, but when we really hit like the rich vein of form and just kept winning and winning and winning, they were both playing in centre midfield as a pair pretty much every single game. And they're not the kind of midfielders who get the ball and rest on the laurels and take 5-10 seconds to the sideway to pass it, or likewise can only pass it sideways or backwards. They're both very technically astute, always take the first touches. And something I noticed with Wheeler again in the Sunday game just yesterday. Well, the second he received the ball from one of the defenders for a pass, he'd immediately just turn around and look forwards. Try to get the ball forwards as quickly as possible, but not resort to just hoofing it, super fast. But matching the style that the rest of the team has been playing in most of the last few seasons now of passing the ball quickly, for making sure above all else that would keep it and then get it forwards when the time's right. And Francis is almost like almost the same kind of player. Again, just technically gifted, excellent pass for the ball, whether it's short across the ground or long over the top. And both of those together usually tend to just keep it ticking over left, right, forwards, backwards whenever it's needed to just help make sure that we don't lose the ball, but also enough defenses when we need to. And as for Booty, he's in the England C team last year, which I know some people brush off, but you don't get picked for the England C team in order being worth picking in the first place. And there's a stat I saw somewhere on Twitter. I forgot the exact place he ranked. I think he was third in the league for chances created and progressive passes forwards, despite being at Maidstone, who unfortunately for them languishing at the bottom of the league for most of the whole year, which is almost like a testament to his quality as well. They're playing a team who don't get much of the ball, don't make many chances or score many, yet still create so many from his own handiwork. It's almost like having another Greg Ollie in a sense. If you got players who can recycle possession and pass it side to side really, really well, but also another player in who can play the final pass that unlocks the defense and then sets yourself up for a chance to score. So I think, to be fair, this midfield generally for the past few seasons has been really good, but especially again this year, a number of players who can fill the creative roles, the defensive roles, and keep it taking over whatever the team selection is, and make sure that we don't have to compromise on the style. Say if Ollie's unavailable, for example, or injured or so on, someone else can just go in, fill in the gap, and fill in the same kind of role, which will make it a lot easier to accommodate the rest of the team, as opposed to having to change tactics based on the lineup you put out.
That's it, isn't it? It's nice to see, like I said, the players coming in early and kind of getting Williams and getting a settled squad that he can work with over the pre-season rather than panicking as the weeks go on. He can have as many training sessions as he can, many pre-season games to get that right for the first game of the season now, can't he?
Mm-hmm. So that's the big thing, like you said just there, about players being here from the start as opposed to coming halfway through. I've got a much bigger window to settle in and a much more forgiving window to settle in, because we all love winning friendly games, but ultimately whether you win or lose a friendly doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. It's more so about what you learn from it, what you gain from it, and how the team get used to playing with each other. And a big part of like the system generally with being able to pass the ball and keep it so well is that players know where other players are going to be, almost like without having to think about it.
Yeah.
So it makes you shuffle the ball along just so much quicker without having to stop, turn, check where everyone is, go backwards again, and so on. And the more, like a midfield trifecta play together, the more they'll just be understanding each other's strengths, weaknesses, preferred behaviors, who usually does what. Just work like a well-oiled machine. So it'd be nice to have them all from the start.
Definitely. Mark's just asking there, can we get the links to the guest channels work, the video descriptions? Definitely get them in. I know we love both your works. Like I say, if you check out the pitch at night, I know it's Emilio's that we've used from the Wembley as well, and Dan's work that he's always put in the YouTube channel, absolutely fantastic. And his new Facebook group as well, Dan, now, yeah?
Yeah, I basically put that up last week when Elon was having a bit of a hissy fit with Twitter, so I just thought, yeah, if I get this set up now, that's just a place where I can maybe share all my content and know that it's maybe going to actually go out, so...
Some really good work. We'll definitely get them in the description as well. And once we share this after the show, we'll put them on there as well. Also, and Emilio's just asking, Wayne's just asking Emilio, how do you think Gateshead performed against Sunderland yesterday? Evening, Wayne, thank you very much for watching as well.
Pretty well overall, regardless of the final score. Obviously, going 2-0 up, even if the first goal being deflection, was very pleasing. It was very nice 20 minutes to be 2-0 up against a team at so many divisions higher. But regardless of the defeat, in the end, I think one thing is that the style of play works against teams who you consider the top end ones. The good teams. It's not something where it's like we can only pass the ball around against teams who don't want it and want to sit off. Because some of them we're chasing the players around all game pretty relentlessly, and yet there were so many moments where we're still able to put really good passages of play together from back to front, from one end of the pitch to the other. Like you saw, if Conor Panny's goal went straight up from the keeping that pass,
fantastic, wasn't it? Yeah.
Own box, all the way up the pitch, edge of theirs, shot, goal. So it just proves that the style pays dividends. It works, and it's something that we can definitely stick to regardless of who the opposition are. Like obviously, sometimes you need little adjustments here and there based on the team that you're facing, but it's not the case of we'll have to totally abandon it just because we're playing a team who might be first or second in the league and sit back behind the game and just go for a draw. Like when the style works, when everyone's pulling the same direction, and follows the same tactical mantra, there's no reason to go and see teams near the top end as well as teams at the bottom. It's not for us if we nail it as best we can.
Definitely. Nice comment from Wayne, and another nice comment from you as well. Nice banter on the show. And getting back to yourself, Dan, I mean, just going through the signs and Shields announced Hunter leaving, and quite a big news on social media within minutes, obviously signing for the Gateshead, and then goal scoring machine, Aidan Rutledge, raw talent obviously coming through, which I really liked a lot with Aidan last season in the Northern League, and obviously now a goalkeeper coming out. There's been a lot of banter on Gateshead and kind of goalkeepers coming in and when's going to happen, but finally getting Archie and on loan as well. Just your thoughts on them three signings?
Yeah, well, I think speaking to a couple of South Shields fans and they all rated Jordan Hunter extremely highly, and I think they initially thought it was going to be tough to replace him. I mean, granted, I think they've maybe replaced him pretty well in John Lafudi, who's a defender I do rate quite highly, but I think he's going to be a pretty good asset to us, I'd say. I think at this stage of pre-season it is maybe a bit difficult to fully assess what you think of players, because I think over the years pre-season is known to be maybe a bit deceiving. I think is ultimately is just all about getting your fitness levels up, getting your first touch back and what have you. But I'll say I wasn't able to go to the game yesterday for a reason that said off camera. But I've watched highlights, and I think the first goal especially, you look at the way we broke away. John Hunter was a sort of key aspect of that. As a defender that's not afraid to bomb forward. Then getting on to Aidan Rutledge, I think this. I'd like to think this is going to be a long-term thing because it's a massive jump up. There's no getting away from that. But you don't score that amount of goals in a season if you've not got something about him. It doesn't matter what level you're playing at. And you got to remember a few years ago we signed Macaulay Langstaff from a Northern League Division 2 team, and it took him a few years, a few spells at other clubs before we really sort of started to see him grow. And could this be something similar? I really like to think so. I mean, I think it may take him to maybe have a loan spell at maybe a National League North club or a Northern Premier club, just to give him that bit more experience. So I think if we work this properly, then I think going forward we could have a very good player there, and maybe think in a few years, like it was with Langstaff, there'd be maybe interest from quite a lot of other clubs, and hopefully we get, if it ever comes to it, get a few quid in for him. And of course yesterday Archie Mayer coming in, we all saw what he did in the playoff final at Wembley. There's heroics in the penalty shootout. I like that signing. He's really good with his feet, which I think is maybe what we've needed. I think over the last few years we've maybe not been able to strike up a good balance between a keeper that's good with his feet and a good shot stopper as well. I think Dan Langley, he's who's a decent enough shot stopper, but his distribution at times maybe let him down a little bit. I think Philip Marshall was maybe, I'd say the other way around. So if we struck up that balance, then it could work an absolute treat. But you got to remember, he's still a young lad. He is still developing. But I think obviously last year it was maybe a bit of an understudy to Sam Slocum at Notts County. Here he'll be a bit more of a regular. So so fingers crossed we can that can be something that pays dividends.
No, some huge signings. And just before we go on as well, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's watching. A great audience so far as well. We really appreciate support. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I think we're about 60 away now from that 1,000 subscribers. So it'd be really good if we hit that before the new season starts as well. And getting back to yourself, Emilio, going back through last season, obviously when it was the kind of dark times, and I know a few questions were asked of Williamson last season in the hard spells, but for me, a top manager, learning, and a good team around him, like to be in Watano, he's been on the show, and he's just, what a character he is as well. Did you ever have any doubts, or do you think this is kind of fits Gateshead perfect and for the future of the club as well?
I think with last season in particular, it was almost a game of patience, but personally, pretty much just agree with you word for word, in the sense that the style of football that we're playing now is like an excellent fit. It's not the easiest style in the world, because obviously sometimes it's so much safer in the short term, just kick the ball 50 yards down the pitch, get it away from your goal if you're under pressure, or try and just play a long ball into a big target man, hope that they can cast it down. Because it requires a lot of prowess to pull off, because just obviously the more passes you make, with any pass that you make at any point, there's always a risk that someone can underhit the pass, overhit it, lose the ball, and that risk goes up, the more and more you pass it around. But when it works, it pays dividends. And even in last season, when there was points where we just felt like we were losing every single week almost. I was like, see, nothing really matters until, all the games in the season have been played. It doesn't matter where you are after 10 games, 20 games, 30, if you're not in the same spot when it ends. So even when things were looking pretty bleak, I was still just like, we've got promoted as league winners. The season just gone. At the very least, all the coaching staff involved, just on that basis alone, would deserve the full season to have a chance to do things well. But even when we're the bottom in the relegation zone and stuff like that, not to try and sound like I've got some like amazing foresight or someone, because nobody knew, nothing's ever certain in football. But I was like, just back, Mike and Ian, just all the way from the start of the season until the end, because we know the quality that they've put into the team and brought the team and the style of play that they've cultivated and what they can do. And even like say that average attendances for a number of years now, from not excluding the COVID seasons and so on, have been so much higher than they were prior, even when we were last in the National League, because we have like a completely different style as a team now to then. I remember by the end of the Neil Aspin era, everyone's hair would turn grey after some results sometimes, because there was so many matches where I try to play ultra safe, 5 at the back, launch the ball forwards, as far as possible. And it always seemed like we're going like a run where it would work well, win a few games, they've got to run, lose a few games, vice versa. But there's so much just more. Even when last season, I would have put that like team Gateshead squad over the one in the National League from previous years. So much quality and so much ability, and everyone understands, what's required to play football, and not just in an aesthetically pleasing way, but a way that breaks down defenses and wins games.
Definitely. And flip that the other way, Dan. Obviously, say new season starts, Gates have a good start, and a bit higher at the football pyramid. Coaches do lose their jobs very early. Could there be kind of clubs coming in for Williamson and the backroom staff at Gateshead if they are getting a good start?
Potentially, but I think at this level of football, you've got to remember is like the players and the management at these clubs are like maybe a lot closer to reality than obviously maybe what you get in the Championship and the Premier League. And I think Williamson and his family are pretty settled up here in the Northeast now, which is obviously, that selfishly speaking, bodes well for us. So I think but I think they'll always be interested in Mike. Like, I think there always maybe has been since I'd definitely say at least since the season before last, when we won the league and what have you. People had seen the style of play that we have. So like things can change in football very quickly, but I think one thing that we do know now is that that the club is in good hands. So if any like big changes that do have to be made, there would be suitable replacements lined up. So I think like this football club now is a lot different. I'd say it's a bigger football club now. It's a more respected football club now than maybe what it was a few years ago.
Definitely. And we'll give this one as well, Dan. We're just asking, what do you think on the James Montgomery fair to release him?
I think with Monty, it was. I think for him, it was a case of he wanted to concentrate maybe a little bit more on the coaching side of it that he's doing. I think he was maybe after a bit more regular first team football as well. So I think this is maybe like partially like down to the player as well. Again, it is non-league level. These players do have maybe lives outside of football, and they maybe can't commit to. They maybe get to a point where they can't commit to full-time football anymore. But so I don't blame him. I obviously wish him all the best at Spenny. So it's sad to see him go. He's done like a lot of great things for his football club over the last few years. Like, you think his shootout heroics against Barnet, against Farsley Celtic, the amount of penalties he saved in like just like in regular time in matches, the amount of like just crucial saves he's made at crucial times. So like he'll always be fondly remembered. So yeah, it's one of those. It's sad, but it's understandable.
Definitely. Mr. Luke Evening, thank you very much for watching as well. Just mentioned that Aidan Rutledge looks solid. And like you say, the rest of the signs as well. I know Paul Bryson's been on a few times on the show on the non-league side of things, and he just cannot rate him high enough. He's just one of these foxes in the boxes where if the ball bounces in the right place, he's there every time. I think once he gets that first goal, the second goal, he'll just be on fire. If not even just possible, 1 month loan out, as Dan said there, to another club, kind of a little bit low down the pyramid, just get that goal scoring record, and he'll be flying without a doubt as well. Christopher, thank you very much for watching as well. Even lads, love the work you all do on the club. This one's for you, Emilio. Which trialists have impressed you the most so far?
Not to go back to goalkeepers again, but obviously Alpha Mears came in as a loan signing for the rest of the season. But if I'm not mistaken, it's Harrison Bond, the other goalkeeper that we currently have on trial, who played half a game against Sunderland and also half against Hebburn Town. And I thought, again, not to compare players to each other being really similar in style, but in the second half against Hebburn, when he was playing just a few days ago, there was lots of points where he just did, really, he pulled off some excellent saves, first thing, which is, what everybody wants from a goalkeeper at the basic level. Then there was other points where, say, if a striker was closing them down and stuff like that, he just stayed, cool as a cucumber under pressure of the ball, and just turn past them, get the pass out. He wouldn't just, like panic, and looked at it immediately, just clear the ball to get it somewhere to safety. So he seemed very calm under pressure. And obviously, that was only, one half in one game, and again, against Sunderland, one off in another game. But based and just on those, almost looks like the same style, kind of keep it good with the feet, comfortable on the ball, and capable of pulling off good saves as well. So I'm hoping we'll get him tied down, and then we're gonna have two keepers, both almost just as good as each other, just to push each other on and be able to rely on both, because keepers might tend to not get injured and stuff like that so often, but you never know when you need a backup, but not just a backup, someone who's just as good as the guy can play in the first team on a regular basis and so on. So you're gonna have one at a time, but it never hurts to have strength in depth. I've also thought Malik Dijksdale, not too sure how to pronounce that just yet. The winger who's played the last few games as well, scored the goal against Hebburn with a side-footed volley when a cross came in, and the game was played against Sunderland. And he's, I feel like it's been a while since we've had wingers who are really fast on the ball, and, like excellent with the going around players, almost like the old-fashioned, winger style of just running at someone, trying to beat them for skill, and away they go.
Like Wayne Phillips, isn't it?
Just like him. So I'm hoping that we can see more of him across the rest of pre-season, and hopefully, based on what I've seen so far, get him tied down, because not to go in like me book of football cliches, but sometimes you need something different. Sometimes there's instances where it's, hot, you just might struggle, or it's harder to break down a team by passing the ball from side to side if they are patient in defense and so on. You need someone who's just able to take a defender on, because I can often say it with wingers, if they are able to get the measure of the man who's on the same side as them, they can start to do it over and over and over again, just from match to match, beat the player. And that's just another way to make chances, and making chances scoring goals, obviously, a benefit in itself. And likewise, there's quite a few games left in preseason still, a number of weeks to go. So I imagine there's plenty of players so far that, we don't know are going to come in on trial yet, but we'll be able to see them when they do. And I'm sure everyone has their eyes peeled, because it's the most exciting part of preseason. Just seeing which new players almost seem like they just get plucked out of thin air, and who does well and who you want to keep.
Yeah, it's good watching especially the trials that's come on. You can just see people on the phones Googling who's this, who's that, and who's he playing for, and how many goals he scored. It's always a good sign of pre-season, that one as well. Lots of love coming in for you there, Emilio. Tell him to go football manager though. Love you, Emilio, and love your umbrella as well.
Yeah, it was nice keeping us dry.
Miss just mentioned as well, I was impressed with the number 16 for Gateshead against Hebburn as well. Like we said with the trialists now, I think with the North East Non-League show, we touched on it on our last show as well. There's just so many teams now, and there's a good football pyramid where players can now come in at Gateshead, dropping down every single division now down to the Northern League, and just so many players want to impress. And you might not do for one club now, but there's so many clubs that will be chasing that one player, which is absolutely amazing now for the the non-leagues short scene as well. And just getting back to yourself, Dan, and this is a question for both of you, but starting with yourself, Dan. Look at last summer. I know we did a show and it was all doom and gloom again. Obviously, just lost the two main strikers. Heads down from a lot of fans on social media. It just feels totally the opposite this summer, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does. I think obviously last summer there was obviously the one league on such a high from that. Then I think when I remember it almost came a bit out of the blue, the sale of Langstaff. I think somewhere in the back of our minds we were maybe all expecting it, because I think the way he performed the season before last, there was always going to be interest, and at the end of the day, when you're at this level, there is unfortunately always a bigger fish. So he made the decision to go to Notts. They activated the clause in his contract. Same with Kedwin Scott. So I think there was a bit of have we replaced them properly, etc. But I think one thing that was always at the back of my mind is that we'd lost those, but obviously I'd like to Bailey, Ward, Ollie, players like that maybe even played at National League level, or you had the quality to step up to National League level. So I always had that maybe in the back of my head. I think a lot of people maybe read into specific transfers maybe a little bit too much. You might see, York have signed this player, or Bourne would have signed this player, and everyone just assumes that just because I've got that one player, it just means they're going to absolutely turn everyone over easily every week. But it never really works like that. I seem to find I remember the York fan telling us last summer that we'd lost our two best players and replaced them with nobody, and we were not the same in that. And lo and behold, we finished several points above them, and took 4 points off them. So
exactly.
that went well.
Excellent. Even now, thank you very much. Great show. Thank you very much. Now, I really appreciate your support as always. And back yourself, Emilio. Same question, obviously. The change around going from last summer to this summer, it's huge now. And we touched on it earlier. The players have came in earlier. The fans are excited on social media as well. It's just nice to see again, isn't it?
It's a big change from the transfer window between seasons this time last year. I was silently praying that we'd be able to keep both of them, but it's an inevitability in non-league football that you very quickly learn there's always a bigger fish with more money in the wage budget, and it's quite a regularity for pretty much nearly every single team in the league, that from season to season you might have your best player or a few of your best players always leave, and that's just something you've got to be prepared for. With the end of last season finishing and Langstaff scoring so many goals, the most in a single season since I've started going against. It's the 10th season I've watched as a fan now, and it wasn't just the number of goals he scored, the same with Kevin Scott, but the quality of them as well. It was finishing that would be otherwise sort of go from what would feel like impossible angles for most strikers, and yet the two of them would have no issue with putting them in the net and scoring them. But as the season ticked on by, went into dying weeks and stuff like that, and then finished, I guess I just saw it coming. I was good when I opened my phone and saw the tweet. It's Knox can't even sign Macaulay Langstaff for an undisclosed fee, but it's something I'd accepted because it's just almost like reality. Unless you've got a lot of chunks of change sitting around, your best players tend to leave, and you've just got to deal with it and move on. And like I mentioned, bring in replacements, and sometimes people see the replacements as just immediately as understudies, they can't offer anything to match up to what came before. But that's just not how football works. Players don't grow on trees. But just because you've lost one good player doesn't mean you've got no chance of getting another one. I think it'll be nice having Denanga from the start of this year as well, because when he came in, he made a big difference. It's we had a little upturn in form when we had Danny Elliott on loan before he was recalled by Bourne. And even the difference in the belief in the fans, it meant having another striker who was just in form, scoring goal after goal, is quite huge, because it's almost like you can rely on someone to pull you out of trouble. that you couldn't otherwise. I thought there was a lot of games at the start of last year that were, could have won on another day. There was, we had a little cliche of, if only insert, if Macaulay Langstaff or Kevin Scott were still here, we'd have won X game. This one.
Yeah.
You can't go on like that because that's just not how reality works. But having Matt Denanga around already and still plenty of time to get so many more players in now, regardless of who have lost. Like I do rate both Dan Wardano and Bailey highly, but when their contract, when they turn down their contracts, that's what I was referring to just a minute ago. Sometimes the players that you want to keep leave. That's just how it is, and it's something you've got to accept and move on from. But it's the same for every single team in the league. Really, there'll be players every single club wanted to keep who have moved on, or like even the other way around. So when one person leaves, someone else can come in and be just as good, if not better. And it's just a case of, wait and seeing, finding out, but it's not the end of the world. When someone does go, even when they made a contribution like Langstaff and Scott did last year, quite a huge one. But, just keep on moving.
Right. What we're going to go over, lads, in about next 10 minutes is kind of going to get a prediction of where you think Gateshead are going to finish in the league next season. So any fans that's watching as well, get your comments in. Want to know where Gateshead will finish next season, who possibly could be the star performer. Get them comments in. And we'll get them out very shortly as well. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well and help the show grow as much as we can. And getting back to now, obviously, next season. And Dan, seeing what Williamson's brought in so far and the glimpse that you've seen in the pre-season so far as well, what would you like to see come in and what positions do you still think need covering?
I think maybe we could look to get the left back / left wing back in. I think that's maybe a position that we could maybe use a bit more covering. I think maybe someone to maybe playing a bit of a number 10 role, I'd say. Maybe just someone that could maybe offer the service to Denanga and Campbell. I mean, whether we put Regan Booty in that sort of role, whether we maybe push Greg all into that sort of role, it all remains to be seen. But I guess that's the beauty of these pre-season games. It's maybe an opportunity to try one or two things out, knowing that the result doesn't really mean anything. I mean, if we get a result of Newcastle next week, it doesn't mean that we're a Champions League standard team that are going to conquer the National League. But by the same token, if we don't get such a good result against Dunster, it doesn't mean that we're playing.
Exactly.
We're playing 3 leagues above our actual standards, because it's just a time where you do get deceiving results. But I'd rather surely though you'd rather know what systems don't work now and maybe get those mistakes out of your system now than when we're playing against Boreham Wood on the 5th of August, when from that point onwards it actually matters.
Yeah, and yourself, maybe obviously looking at the games that you've seen so far as well, which is then positions that kind of stand up that need covering before that season kicks off.
I think primarily for me personally, so again, like Dan mentioned, almost going on off the left backs, but just generally across the back line, seeing 1 or 2 more players come in, whether they be young players, permanently young players on loan. Because, for example, Williamson still got registered as a player, a tremendous defender, but he's been playing less and less just in the past few seasons as they've gone by, because footballers get old. It's the same. We've got Story and Magnev, both excellent players in their own rights as well, but again, both are just getting on age-wise, so it's nice to have a balance of young and old from position to position, and players can learn a lot from each other regardless of their age. And last season, Conor Panning started filling in at left back towards the end, and it's tremendous. And now every time he cuts in, he manages to beat the player in front of him. But he was also originally in midfield listed as well, so it's good that he can cover multiple areas. But it can never have too many players who can pick up when one person can't, whether they're injured, suspended, whatever, drop it in. As for midfield, it's almost, I couldn't really pick any fault in it at this point nearly. I mean, if another midfielder came in, I wouldn't be disappointed, but I think that's one of the strongest areas of the team, if not the strongest now, especially compared to the rest of the league as well. The number of midfielders that we've got already who can match each other's roles and just play well with each other is already pretty stacked. So maybe another one still, just because we tend to have 3 centre midfielders just from game to game at any given time, and obviously 3 players of the same kind at once. means you could have, 5 or 6 in the squad, and that's something that gets injured and so on. And then likewise, it can never hurt to have too many options up front either, whether it's, a different style of player, the ones we've already got, like Martin Denanga and so forth, or just an extra player to back up those two and Rutledge as well. Because again, one thing that fans have said quite a lot is they think we'll do really well, but might struggle with strength and depth, when start playing multiple fixtures in the same week and so on. And as much as that's one of everyone's favorite football cliches, strength and depth, it's a real thing. The same players, can't play every single game all of the time for the full season, because that's just not how it works. So you've got to be prepared when someone can't, to have people who can fill in and still, benefit the team, so it doesn't feel like you're caught lacking. And that's often the difference between, getting 3 points or dropping some when you've got a tired squad, injuries happen naturally. It's just an inevitable thing in football. And there's times we think, if we had so and so, if it would have won the game. So if you can get to the point where you can still rely, everyone else to fill in, regardless of who's unavailable, it's in a good stead just for your league position, anyways. And your aims for the season, because it means there's not a point where you might go through it, they say a month or so, where the team feels weaker now.
Yeah, we'll touch on left backs as well. I mean, you just look at Newcastle and Dummett signing a new contract today. I think they've got 42 left backs. I would imagine from the first team down to the under-18s at the minute. I'm sure you can get one loaned in from Newcastle of the amount of left backs that we've got last season. Unbelievable. But yeah, lots still for Williams to kind of think about as the next few weeks goes on. I would imagine that there will possibly one or two, but even loan signings even coming in from the high up the football pyramid as well, which you might see over the next couple of weeks coming in. Just looking back now at the pre-season games so far as well, Dan, just getting to the Heaven game, what was your thoughts on the 1-0 win against Heaven?
It was, I've got to say, I think it was maybe, as a spectator, it's probably one of those games that deserved more goals than it actually got. I think some of our attacking play was pretty good, but just couldn't quite put some of the chances away. But by the same token, I thought Heaven made a pretty good account themselves on the night as well. Forced the trialist goalkeeper into a couple of good saves, rattled the crossbar. So I think it was a good workout. I mean, I think it's the first game of pre-season. I don't think you can really read into the result side of it at all. But I think there was good passages of play. I think I was impressed with just how calm Regan Booty looked in midfield. As we mentioned, one or two of the trialists made quite a good impression, which is sometimes not the case. So I think there was definitely a good number of positives to take from the night's work.
Definitely. And Emilio, I know you spoke about the Sunderland game early in the show as well, but I mean, just for anyone that wasn't watching, just your thoughts again on the Sunderland game, and obviously looking forward to the Newcastle game as well.
Again, I was very pleased to go 10-0 up, but it's a shame to have lost the game in the end from the nod. But the main benefit from it was just showing that the style of play can work against teams so many levels up the pyramid. Obviously, it might not be the full strength side, so to speak, someone would put out in the opening championship game of the season and so on, especially since they played Shields a few hours before as well. But anytime you play a team bigger than themselves in pre-season, you always want to one up them almost, or just prove that you can compete against teams from higher in the pyramid, regardless of whether it's a competitive match or not. So in that sense, scoring 2 against them, going 2 up in some of the passages of play that were put together, I was very, very pleased with. And looking forward to next Saturday. Very much excited to take everybody's picture. I think, I'm not too sure off the top of my head, because, I've not been around forever, but I feel like that'll be possibly, theoretically, the highest placed team we've ever played, be it in a friendly or a competitive gaming team that finished in the top 4 in the Premier League. I don't think, have we ever, Dan, you might know, your expert football historian, has there ever been a team we've played as high as that?
I think we played Newcastle's, had a couple of friendlies against Newcastle's first team in the 90s, obviously under Keegan, maybe finished second. So, but I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, but it's been a long time probably since we've played a team that high up, especially Newcastle's first team, because we're last game against them, I think it was 2015 when Steve McLaren was still in charge. That was 1-0. Not that exciting, so I'm looking forward to this one way more, especially given their recent achievements. And again, just to test ourselves against the best possible teams as much as we can, because practice makes perfect. And playing teams better than you, even if you lose, is how you learn more about your own side, as opposed to, playing villages from divisions so far like underneath ourselves. Because the football pyramid is for a reason, and it's good to just test yourself against the best people possible, regardless of whether you think you've got a chance of winning or whether you think you might get trounced. It's worth it.
It is a good run out, isn't it? Will be a very exciting game. Look forward to that one. A couple of predictions that's come in over the last kind of 5 minutes there. Mr. Luke, I reckon between 7th to 9th with next season. Geordie Joe has just mentioned Forbes night, and Martin must have the greatest season in football, nearly placed and all injury prone as well. Mark's just mentioned high finish than last season, just missing out on the playoffs, which would be a massive improvement on last season as well. Bobby, question for yourself. I know we touched on earlier Montgomery, but how do you think you will do for Spennymoor next season?
I think they'll do well. I think, as we've all seen last season, he's very much proved himself as one of the best keepers at National League level. I think I remember especially when we played away at Chesterfield on a Tuesday night. We lost the game in the end, but I think he was pretty much the sole reason that it actually was only 2-1. I think a few Chesterfield fans after that game actually on his case on Twitter asking him to rejoin them. So I think he's going to be a good asset for Spennymoor. I really do.
Yeah, and we'll spend a show on next week. I know the lads are very excited to kind of chat about their signings as well. Let's keep your eyes open for that one. And start with your predictions now. So, Emilio, who do you think, well, where do you think you're going to finish next season? Who do you think that star player is going to be for Gateshead?
In terms of finishing possessions, this is always an impossible one to say. That's my biggest football superstition is never make predictions. Time, always. Because, I don't know, the universe works in mysterious ways sometimes. But I definitely think we'll be, touch wood, at the top half, especially when you mirror the last few months nearly of last season, because the form table at the time and stuff like that, going from January, I think it was, until the end of the season, it was only Wrexham and Ross County who picked up more points, with more wins and fewer defeats. And I think the run that we went on puts us in really good stead, especially with having so many of the same players, around this time for round 2 almost. So as far as we're concerned, the sky's the limit. We've shown, regardless of the division we're in, any team can beat any team on, the day, regardless of who's being who. And there's no reason not to look to every single game in the league as another chance to, first and foremost, win and go as high up the table as we possibly can. And in terms of star players, I guess I'll just give another shout out to Greg Ollie. He's been a mainstay for years and years and years. At this point now, it's making me feel quite old. I think it was 18 first joined Steve Watson era when he scored those 4 goals in a game and a half in pre-season. But it's a player I think we've been very privileged to have for so long. Quite easily step up. Very simply, there's no doubt in his technical ability. The way some of the passes and the vision that he has fallen is astounding, especially I think compared to the standard of what's even considered a good midfielder generally in the National League below, in the league above. I've never, at least in my opinion, I've not quite had a player in a seriously long time who's able to pull off such a big variety of passes. He's not just a 30-yard long ball merchant who can hit those accurate, but particularly his really, really short ones as well. If I had equated for every time he backheeled it on the edge of the box, if I looking to put someone through on goal and scored for him, I'd have at least a fat wallet based on that. And that's something that just a lot of the other centre midfielders and attack midfielders in the league just don't do. So having him has always been a big coup, and he makes the strikers in front of him better just from the quality of chances he's able to make and how often he's able to do so.
Yeah, great shout. And same question for yourself, Dan.
Well, you look at it since Mike and Busted took over as the managerial team. I think it's maybe safe to say we have progressed year on year. I mean, we won't count the COVID season as it's maybe now known, because I think that whole season was a bit farcical, a bit of a non-event really. So I think we will push on again. I think I've got to say I really do fancy us to get into the top half. Whether we can get that magical 7th place spot remains to be seen, because as we know and as has been touched upon a lot by the media. It is going to be a very open league this year, but there's a lot of admiration for Gateshead's recruitment so far, and I think last year, like you'd watch like maybe people's predictions videos on YouTube as like Gateshead in 24th, Gateshead in 23rd, like just pretty much all of them that you watched. Whereas this year, like a Gateshead and relegation battle aren't barely even being used in the same sentence. So I think, like I think. I think most Gateshead fans would maybe be pretty content if it was a sort of season where maybe even we can maybe even regard it as being a little bit dull as far as league goes, where there's no worries about relegation. But if it's not meant to be in terms of pushing on for the playoffs, then it is still a working project, as the famous saying goes, trust the process. So it's all about steps in the road, and I think the next step is to maybe push on into the top half. But I'd certainly take it if we could have maybe another decent run in the FA Trophy, a decent run to maybe the third round of the FA Cup or something like that. So I think that'd be a good season, maybe mid-table and another cup run. In terms of players to watch, I think Kent Richardson could really come on this year. Actually, it was a real like you could like when he wasn't there again. It was one of those that you could really feel the absence, and I think like is a really solid, no nonsense kind of defender. And I think he's got he's maybe had the necessary experience within his career now that he could maybe act as a leader for the younger players out there. So I think he's going to be a crucial player for us this year. Fingers crossed we can keep him fit. But then of course you've got likes of Greg Ollie, who'll be captain. I think Regan Booty's going to be a huge asset for us as well.
Definitely. And Christopher just mentioned there as well, top half finish for the year. No, that was my prediction as well. And I've always said, I think if you're kind of in that top half and you see how close nobody the from kind of mid-table up then playoff spots are come the end of the season, if you're still in that mix in that business end come the end of the season, it's anybody's. And you kind of see if you're getting them playoffs, that last minute push, that momentum, you never know where it can take in the Football League. It would be absolutely amazing to finally see Gateshead in there as well. Just a question each for you lads, just before we go as well. Starting with yourself, Dan. Back up, obviously doing work on your channel a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely amazing work. I was going to, like we just touched on earlier in the show as well. But how much are you looking forward to be back at the International Stadium and cheering on Gateshead next season?
Oh, definitely looking forward to it. Obviously, I think we're all sort of feeling that anticipation you get every year on the fixtures day. I think we're all stood by our phones or iPads or whatever, just waiting for the notifications to come through. I think there's a couple of surprises with the fixture list. I think we're expecting it to be Hartlepool on Boxing Day. When it came up as York, I think we're all a bit like, what? But yeah, it's going to be great. So I've mapped out my away days. I'm hoping, touchwood, that I'll be able to get to all the competitive home games anyway. So fingers crossed it will be a overall relatively successful season.
No, definitely. And for yourself, maybe obviously some great work with the cameras. I know I absolutely love the pictures that you're putting on. I can't share them enough. Obviously, fantastic work. I mean, how much are you looking forward to capturing some great memories next season?
Can't wait. It's good fun. Just from the first season I've done it up until now, it hasn't lost like its fun factor. I still feel like a kid on Christmas every time I'm just being on the pitch, taking pictures of the games and being able to be as essentially as close as possible, especially more so than like back in the day when I was sat in the stand and stuff like that. It's a really interesting experience being so close, hearing just like what the benches are saying amongst themselves to each other and so on. And it's almost just like 4D football in a sense. You might as well be playing on the pitch yourself of how close it gets. But it's been like a reached incredible experience going from being sat in the stands since I was like 15 or something as a little kid to being on the side of the pitch, taking everybody's picture, being spammed with messages on my Instagram after a game from all the players, like, any pictures, mate? It's like, yes, I'm working on them.
Yes.
All right, guys. Knowing so many, just like a first name basis, and really feeling like just part of something and contributing to it in my own way. Like, I might not be, on the pitch doing anything except that one time against Scunthorpe when I had to take that really good touch. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks, Josh. That next season, I got a big cheer from the crowd. That was the biggest cheer I'll ever get playing football. Still think about it. But just being able to take everybody's picture, it's something so simple that's so enjoyable. And every now and then you do get those really good ones where you capture like a moment and you're part of experiencing it. And long may it continue. Well, again, like Dan mentioned, I've already looked at the fixture list and decided, which ones I might be looking forward to the most. I am very glad I don't have to go to Hartlepool on New Year's Day, skinned, exhausted, like usual. It got very old very fast sitting in the bar near stadium with no money before the game at that time of year. And that being second game of the season and first away game, I hope we get quite a big number down there and a really good crowd in the stadium. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to doing it again. It's the 5th season now. It feels like I've just started still. And can't keep spamming my Facebook page with all my pictures from the game and showing everyone what I'm able to see from so close and just share it with all the fans.
Awesome, amazing work. I can't wait to see some pictures next season as well. But lads, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Like you say, we wish Gateshead the very best of luck next season. Hopefully see them pushing on for that playoff spot come the end of the season as well. Again, everyone that's been watching, really appreciate your support as well, as always. Lots coming up next week. Wednesday the Toon Gossip Show on Wednesday night. We've got the Spinning Wheel Show on Thursday night. Next week, South Shield Show. The Division Premier East. I think we've got the Northern League a week after, and just shows coming up the next few weeks as well. I know my wife's not happy, but I'm going to take away in August, so that will make up for it. So we'll get as many shows as we can in before we get away. That's my excuse anyway. But lads, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night as well.
Cheers, thank you.
Likewise, thanks for having us on. Let me go.